Welcome back to Tragedy and Hope's Casual Cafe. This morning we've got not only a special guest, but we've also got an audience. Our special guest is Tragedy and Hope community member David Rodriguez, and he's from San Jose, California. And you might be asking, what's he doing in Connecticut? How'd he get here? He was actually on the East Coast to go to the A.E.R.O conference, which is the alternative educational resource organization run by Jerry Mintz. You might remember Jerry Mintz and A.E.R.O from our previous fundraiser for John Taylor Gatto. And I think that's where we first came into contact with Dave. How you doing, Dave?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Very excited to see the live studio here and share some exciting information and meet the community.
So we asked Dave here this morning for a little cup of coffee. Actually, we're all having water and juice, but it's like casual cafe. It's where we have whatever we want in the morning. We have a little discussion, and we wanted to hear about the A.E.R.O conference and what people were learning about. And he also made a personal visit last night to see John Taylor Gatto and his wife Janet. So he's got a little mini update on the situation from what I understand.
Sure, and just to back up, we've been in touch for a couple of years now because you were one of the first people who contributed to the John Taylor Gatto recovery fund, the fundraiser that we did. It was at the same time that we were doing the fundraiser with A.E.R.O. A.E.R.O raised over $10,000 for John, and we were able to raise over $4,000 or $5,000. We used the Ultimate History lesson to do that fundraiser, and you bought the Gatto fundraiser pack. So we've been in touch since then, and then most recently, you hosted what was it called? The education.
Because we didn't attend, but we were invited to attend.
Yes.
Right, the Education Options Expo, which was an event that you hosted out in California in March, and essentially the goal was to introduce parents to alternatives in education.
That's right.
Right, alternatives and to give them information. So you had gotten in touch about that, and at the same time in that email you mentioned another goal of yours, which was to name a library after John Taylor Gatto.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's how
one comes to sit at the desk in the morning.
Right, that's what inspired.
So we had been hanging out with Allan all weekend. You've probably seen the footage on Allan Weisbecker, unless I put this out first. So. I guess I could entry from that. This might be the first thing I edit. Our special guest today in the background is Allan C. Weisbecker, famed author and Buccaneer extraordinaire. Has anyone ever given you that title? Is that a hat you can wear?
Who's gone through a change in life, so to speak, and now I'm here.
You're going on tour.
I'm going on tour.
And we just talked for the past 72 hours about that, and we filmed a whole lot of footage. So if you haven't seen that footage yet, it's because I'm still editing it, and maybe this is the thing that's shorter and I'll get out first. But since we were already, having a discussion this morning, and we said, hey, Dave, go on and drive by, and let's talk about what you've been doing and what you encountered and some of the books that you brought here, because within the first 30 seconds, he was here adding value. So I was like, that's pretty cool. So... we haven't done this regularly enough, but since, I just got back from PorcFest and all the equipment was in the living room and Allan was going to be here, I said, just throw it together in here. And so far, we've produced a lot of content in the past 4 days. So let's see. Where is the A.E.R.O conference at? Was it in New York someplace?
Yeah, it was in Brookville at the Long Island University Post.
Okay.
Yeah, really beautiful campus out there. But it was about 4 days, Thursday through Sunday.
And about how many people were there?
I would say about 250.
250?
Yeah, 250 folks. I think he said about 13 countries were represented there.
Had you been to the A.E.R.O conference when they had it on the West Coast, like last year or whatever it was?
No. I came across A.E.R.O through a school startup program that they had. So I conceived this dream about 2 years ago to start a school, right? I was so frustrated with what's happening in education, and I made a promise to myself that my kids will never go to the public education system. Just through your interview, great job again with John and everything, opened my eyes, and I said, my kids will never go. I promised myself. So I said, okay, so which school would I send my kids to? I don't have any kids yet.
But you're planning for the future.
For the future.
The types of things that good parents think about before they, go just, replicating themselves in this world and saying, hey, good luck. So that's great. You're thinking about what's going to go on in the future, and you're saying, wow, the options seem kind of murky. And John Taylor Gatto helps to shine some light on that murkiness to say, look, the more you know how to do for yourself, the more you can teach your children how to do for themselves and keep them out of this artificial authority of the state.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So, anyways, that's I took that course, school startup, and then I learned about the A.E.R.O conference
Yep.
and learned about all these people coming out there, and it was awesome. You know, there was people from Austin, Texas, well, all over the place, but Austin, Texas is actually one of the core centers for homeschooling. I'm not sure if people know.
I didn't know that.
And it's one of the fastest growing cities in the nation. They said about 125 people move there a day. So they have a real opportunity. The homeschooling laws in Texas allow for you just to start up. You don't have to do any paperwork. If you want to do a homeschooling or private school, and you just say, okay, we're starting homeschool. We're starting private school. That's all you have to do. So a lot of freedom there. And I met a few key people down there. I'm looking forward to connecting with them. And Jerry has done a great job. Jerry Mintz for the last 25 years running A.E.R.O. But he's like 71, 72. And I think one of his key organizers is doing something else. So he might be passing the baton to some folks down in Texas, or they might be starting something for their own. They started something called...
Well, the point is the people who have been relying on Jerry need to start being more self-reliant and start thinking about, what's going to be there in the vacuum that is created, because he's done a lot over the years.
Yes.
And, just even on the John Taylor Gatto project, like he raised an enormous amount of money, and I'm sure it helped for us to give the ultimate history lesson to those people, and that, they're getting something for their donation.
Absolutely.
But that was something that we couldn't do on our own. We'd kind of done everything we could already. And then he comes along and says, hey, we're doing this fundraiser, and that was another way to help. So I think that's what, has helped John at least maintain his good faith and humanity. He's like, he's got books out there, but they're out of print. And so, and then there's some of them, there's publishers and other things like that. So it's about, in my opinion, getting him to write shorter, like ebooks, because he still has a lot of things he wants to do. But I think sometimes the project's a little bit too big. And if you could get an ebook out there that people could buy on every couple months, new ebook by John Taylor Gatto.
Yeah.
It's only, Ed Epstein's writing ebooks that are 70 pages with really large font that I'm like, this is really 7 pages of a Word document that I just paid $4 for. It's really interesting and worthwhile, but it's a brilliant way to do that model. Yeah. And so, as time continues, we'll see what happens. But he sends on a regular basis some really fascinating stories. Some of them were about his first weeks as a school teacher. Really? And after reading some of these essays, I was like, and this was only like maybe 6 months ago. And he feels kind of like, hey, who's gonna say something to me now in my condition at my age? He's like, he's got stuff to say. And basically after reading about his first 3 weeks as a school teacher, I was like, I don't know how he continued. I mean, he was up against some pretty gnarly shit. And excuse my French. And he's still very able to express himself, even if he's just typing with one finger. It's still very impressive.
Well, his mind is there, and as you saw, when you met him last night, you said to me this morning was that he had a really strong, a hearty handshake. And did you have the opportunity to talk with him a little bit? I know it's still hard for him because his vocal cords are still paralyzed on the left side, but.
I did. No, his handshake is strong. His the light is still in his eyes. Right. He didn't have his dentures in, so he was dentureless. No, he's there. He's there. He's just having a tough time kind of expressing himself, and half his body's paralyzed.
Yeah. So
he has his left arm on his chest, right? And he rolls over and writes. He has his little notepad right there.
Right.
And so I even asked him. I said, we talked about a lot of different things. I said, so you're writing a new book? And he's like, yeah. I said, wow, it's great. I said, how far along are you? He said about a third. I was like, okay, great. Well, keep it up. We're all looking forward to it, John, just so you know. So I see you're in there. I see you're alive, and, we're all waiting for your new book, So he's there. I just, he's 78, 79.
At least, I think, at this point. Oh, I forget what year he was born, but...
I think it's 35.
But anyone in his condition who had been bedridden for the last couple of years after a serious stroke
probably wouldn't be in as good of spirits.
Right, that's the thing. His spirit is there, and he is still willing to get up every day and try so hard to take what's up here and to get it out so that he can communicate. It's amazing to me that he would just continue that struggle every day.
He's still interested in research because Kevin and I send him links all the time, and he's like, yeah, it's encouraging that we're catching on to what he was trying to point to but didn't really want to say directly in his books. And he's like, dig deeper, keep going.
It's funny, when I was just about to leave, he had an iPad, right? And he's like, man, it's like
He's got an iPad now?
somebody gave him an iPad.
Okay, and he's got wireless access on the iPad?
He did, yeah. He's actually, he thought he had no connection, right? He's like, I can't get the connected to the Wi-Fi. And I was like, looking around the house. I'm like, I'll try to figure it out. And I pick it up, and it's like, oh, it's already connected. And he's like, I said, what do you want to read? He says, I want to read Darwin on the Irish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you search it. I click it on that, and I leave it to him. And
he could actually go into the notes for the Ultimate History lesson and click into, because we had looked for that, and he doesn't call them the Irish. He calls them the Celts, I believe, in that book. So that's like, if you go in there and look in the index for Irish, it doesn't show up. And at first it's like, oh, John was pulling my leg. But then and I'm like, start reading, start trying to figure out what he saw and he's describing. Yeah. And I've found that due diligence more times than not pays off. I mean, every now and then, I think his colleague Roland was working with Kevin Cole to put a complete bibliography and references together for the underground history of American education. Sounds cool, right? John's not in the reference. He doesn't want that done. But we want it as researchers because we know it's valuable. And so they were able to verify, because Roland went out and bought hundreds of books, like found the primary sources, and Kevin had found some and that Roland couldn't find.
Right. Roland had it.
And so they have it down to like
done.
Almost everything but one thing in the book that they can footnote, which is pretty fascinating. And some of it's, some of the statements that John said were like two things mixed together a little bit, but you have to excuse someone who's just doing live on the spot recall of their life experience in an unstructured way, because I gave him a 50-page outline. I said, I've just gone through everything that you've done. Wow. Here's my outline. He's like, Richard, if we were here a week, we couldn't do this. And I was like, okay. So I pushed the outline aside, and I'm like, let's just go for it. And that's what you see in the Ultimate History lesson. And that's kind of what I wanted to, it's like, that's history. That's why I don't really edit it. I cut it between camera angles, but you see from the clap of the slate to the end of the tape, even if he's just sitting there thinking before we turn the lights on. So,
and that was one of the best.
And that's
interviews.
some of the most interesting footage is the behind the scene footage.
When the lights go off,
conversation with Kevin.
Yeah, him and Kevin out there talking about the Illuminati and all this stuff, right? Yeah. So it's like, it's there for people who want to watch it, and if you don't want to watch it, you can forward in the chapter or skip forward on YouTube or whatever. It's like, give people the access if they want it, and if not, they can watch a shorter. Go through their own. Just watch hour 3 through 5. That's really interesting, but I really feel the first 2 hours helped us set that up. I did that because I realized that here's this national treasure, and there's not really high quality audio or video of him out there, or maybe one or two speeches, but I was like, what I wanted to do. And we didn't really deliver on my vision, but we got a lot closer to it after Tony built that computer, and I had a faster computer to run the footage because that computer was just choking. I showed him, I'm like, I'm done. He's like, this looks like shit. Let's get you a better computer, because I was editing in blind. Okay, so here's how that went with the footage when I first had to, I was on the old computer. It was like July 2011. And the computer couldn't play the video and show you streaming live. So I'm just cutting in the dark, basically, just hoping my cuts are in the right place. Wow. And then Tony's like, we could actually get you a computer where you could, line up the 4 or 5 camera angles and then play it through and choose the multi-camera. I was like, okay, let's do that. That sounds like a deal.
And then he was able to cut on John's motion, which was pretty neat.
Because when he leans forward and back, he goes out of focus on the one lens. And so I'm like, I need to figure a creative way to get around it. But also you wanted to show that the continuity, that you're not editing anything out. And so when John, which he would gesture quite a lot, when he would gesture, Rich would cut on the gesture. So whenever someone makes an edit, you're like, oh, what's the nature of that edit? But if I'm cutting on motion and it's continuous and it's not a different take, and this is live, it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. So those are the types of things that I did to get around it.
No, and I've seen that 5 or 6 times, fully, and still there's so much content in that interview. I think the whole world needs to see that interview because there's so much valuable information there for literally, and one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about, the education is because, the people who set up the educational system, they're thinking generationally. Right. So a lot of people just think if they're wise, they think in their lifetime, but these guys are thinking generationally. And once I saw that it was very conscious what they did for the system to remove critical thinking, and then going through, I asked for the book earlier, the Principles of Secondary.
What was the first book you asked for when you came in this office?
Yeah, Principles of Secondary Education
by Alexander Inglis.
And then they got the 6 functions or 6 purposes of education, and the first one is creating a reactive response to authority.
Yeah,
and
isn't that useful?
I said, that's so true.
Isn't that useful for the state?
So useful, and that's actually what happens. And it's even, I'm a little bit of a rebel in my life, right? So I'm like, carpool lanes and these kind of things. It's like you're policing yourself. Right?
Yeah.
You're using fear to guide you. And it's just like, man, I see how I've been programmed.
All right, so I have a metaphor. I could draw it out, but basically, there's if this is the goal they want you to get to, they create like this structure of pain and fear.
Yes.
And if you get caught in this funnel, you're going to end up in their objective. So at some point, to write your own script, you have to either go through fear and get out into the unknown, or go through pain and get into the unknown, or both. And then you're like, oh, I'm outside of that direct influence that they're using to harness and enslave everybody else. And it's an invisible tether.
Right.
They don't have to use links and chains and cuffs and keys and all that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
They've got lies that they use through words to get people to believe things that aren't true.
And you're conditioned at such a young age.
Checks
that
and balances.
You become an adult without realizing that you've made a lot of assumptions and that you've believed a lot of things that may or may not be true. You don't know. You've never checked. You've just trusted a lot of authority figures in your life.
And we were talking earlier that, like somebody said, everything I believed was wrong or something. I said, exactly. So that's like the shales or the scales coming off your eyes and say, okay, now we're talking about, critical thinking and observing what's really going on in this experience. Another thing that's interesting is that we only have 5 senses, right?
Yeah.
So there's this whole spectrum of stuff that we don't even know what's going on.
Well, you can use reason as your sixth sense, and then there's even something beyond that, because there's things that make us human. It's our intuition. It's what goes on in the mind that's subjective, that's so hard to put words on, and yet each individual has this kind of experience going on. And so that's really what makes us human. That's our reason and thinking power and questioning and all these different things, right? So I just find it interesting that is the thing that makes us human, and that's the thing that they've not wanted to map out. They're like, no, that's, here's a bunch of hocus pocus ideas on that. Instead of saying, look, here are the things that are common to everybody. We do have these 5 senses, and we get the inputs from the, metaphysical things which exist in reality. And then at some point we form concepts in our mind that are subjective, right? And it's a matter of synchronizing the subjective with the objective, and the objective with the subjective through inductive and deductive reasoning. So there's a place for all these things where we can understand our place in nature and understand ourselves and our environment. And yet they find it so powerful. If we block knowledge of yourself and block knowledge of your environment, guess what? You're going to be controlled by fear and pain, and you're going to go to their objective, like at the top of that funnel, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of...
No, that's a good analogy. And we were talking with John, and because, at this A.E.R.O conference, there's a lot of alternative schools. There's homeschooling. There's
the Montessori. There's the Waldorf school.
Exactly. All these different models, right? And so I was talking with him a little bit and asking him, what some of the key components of a good education is. And he said massive experience, exploration, and adventure. And the reason is that on an adventure, and he's talking about like self-discovery, right? Self-discovery, you have to put your fears on the line. And so actually there was one of the workshops I went to talking about rites of passage. And I thought about you because you mentioned the Richard Branson. And they actually mentioned that in the conference, the Richard Branson part. But one of the guys talking about that brought up the Native Americans. Right, so there was
Vision Quest.
Vision Quest, exactly.
And all these rites of passage have been taken out so that we have extended adolescence as individuals. And we never become adults in our mind or in our bodies because we don't understand ourselves or our environment. And that's what the Vision Quest was, or that's what the Spartans would do to initiate people. This is the secret society history of history.
Exactly.
And it's not that these societies are secret; it's that they possess secrets that you only get through initiation through their ranks. So when people are like Freemasons aren't a secret society, they have public. You can go tour their. No, they have secrets. Absolutely. That is their power. That they lock their secrets in a hierarchical infrastructure that only the chosen selected people who go to the top of these little pyramids can get it. But there's all this other world that's outside of, like, PhD. You have your education system. You have a public education and college, and you get your master's and PhD, and it forms a little pyramid in a speciality. It's a finite closed system. What about all, because you have mathematics and physics and chemistry, you got all these little pyramids. What about all this other stuff? It's like it's a artificial scarcity of that which is available in order to control us through fear and pain.
That's
and if fear and pain is what controls you, then you can understand why rites of passage are no longer
necessary for their structure to
because
exist.
that is how you conquer your fear and you character build and you gain courage and you become an adult and you become responsible for yourself. And it's a mindset. It's a mindset. And so that is the opposite of, that's a mindset that cannot be controlled.
Right. Interesting. So, for the rites of passage, I was going to say they shared a quick story. The Native Americans, one particular tribe, their tribe was under threat. right? And so there was a huge problem. They didn't mention what it was. And so what they did, they sent all the young kids on a vision quest, 3 or 4 days. They leave without food and water. They're out amongst themselves. And when they come back, they sit around the fire and they share with the community the visions and dreams which they saw out there.
Right.
And so when they did that, the elders were able to interpret those dreams, and through that, they are actually to save the tribe. I said, my gosh, there's so much power inside us, we didn't even realize it.
Right. And we're not trying to realize it. I mean, the way that we are born into this world is basically everything was discovered before you got here, kid. And you just have to go through school and listen to these people who know this, and they're going to tell you, and you don't have to go look or discover or be curious or invent for yourself. All the inventions, there's not going to be any more patents. We just have to outsource everything that makes smart economic sense. We've got problems in this country with unemployment. We got all sorts of other problems, and I say those problems deserve solutions. Those solutions can be products and services. Combine that with the sales team. Now we got jobs. Now we got employment, and we need education. So we start, facilitating our own education. We have this interwebs thing. We can access it, do a little searching. Like, what do you think that you just want to go sit and pay a bunch of money for someone to read you books or tell you to read books? Come on. I mean, that's a little antiquated, especially in today's age. And I think when you look at who's successful in this world, it's the people who step back, figure out how to be an individual, explore, discover, and find and add some value to everyone's lives. And then people are like, oh, this GoPro thing's really cool. We can use it in a variety of ways. All of a sudden, he took something that's for adventurers or surfers or skydivers, and it's like, oh, this is something that everybody can have. Now they sell it at the sports store. They sell it everywhere, right? So it's a product or service. It's like an indestructible little camera that sometimes can be waterproof, and those are kind of cool. You can get cool stuffs, right? So it's like a little thing that adds a little spice to life, or a little sugar in a good way, makes life a little bit sweeter. So it's the idea that I don't know if the guy who came up with this went to college or anything like that. But when you look at a lot of successful people, the point is a lot of them drop out of high school or college or what have you because they've already figured out something. Right. Why do I have to go wait and teach me about this stuff? I already figured out something, how to add value in an honest, legitimate way.
For that camera while on a surf trip. He had failed in his previous. He wanted to be an entrepreneur and he failed. And he said, well, I'm going to do what I love, and that's go surfing. So he did a 6-month trip around Indonesia and Australia. And when he got back, he knew what his future was, like on this vision quest, call it whatever you want. Right. And, he's an adult. But
he opened himself to the unknown.
Well, and what did you just say the components of a good education were?
Yeah, exploration,
experience, adventure.
Right, and adventure. And that's he's got an interview where he says exactly what you guys just said about inspiration and where he got his inspiration for the camera.
Well, that's pretty far out because I don't even know his name yet. But I am a fan of his invention.
Nick Woodman.
Nick Woodman. I'm going to write that down.
It's interesting. Also, last night we were talking to John about overproduction, right? And so overproduction that all the big money powers and industrialists, they said if all these people are inventing and creating, they're all going to take our capital, and there's not going to be anything left for us. Yeah. So what we do, we'll keep producing. Let's basically brainwash them to become consumers.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Conspicuous
and that's happening right now. Oh my Lord. Yeah. So I encourage everyone to start producing. Realize that your mind has been stolen, and start producing. Seriously, this is a huge breakthrough right now.
We have to break through conspicuous consumption and premature obsolescence, where they make things to break before they're meant to, like before they could be breaking. Right. Like when I saw that the documentary, it's about the light bulb conspiracy.
Right.
Oh yeah.
About this light bulb, it's been on for like over 100 years, and how they made light bulbs at one point that wouldn't wear out, and you could just they figured it out. They're like, this is awesome.
But they need to make them almost disposable, like everything else, like our clothing, like everything else that we consume, the furniture that we buy, everything that we buy now these days it's disposable in a couple of years. All the electronics, right? That's the planned obsolescence.
The
they just want you to have to continue to consume and consume and consume, and it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Well, consumption is one part of it, but they're just thinking about their revenue streams,
right?
Yeah. Right.
Well, it is a profit motive.
And look at it. The incandescent light bulb is a brilliant invention, and it took Edison a long time to figure that out. Right. So it's a brilliant little symbol. And they said, no, that's not eco-friendly, whatever that BS means. And they said, we're going to have these twisty light bulbs with all this poison inside. So if it breaks in your house, you have to follow a hazmat routine to clean it up.
There's a protocol.
You have to evacuate the house, open on the window. There's mercury vapor in there. And guess what? Mercury is a neurotoxin. Yeah. So I don't think this is good. Even if you put a little thin layer of pressurized glass between my kids or your kids and it, I don't think it's good that we have these things around here. And I think they suck. And they're going to say, well, we've got these new LEDs. Well, guess what? What country did we have to invade and take away people's rights to make these new LEDs? It's like, look, it's like, how much do we need to, like, in other words, is ever evolving technology going to be the source of human happiness and peace? Or is it space travel? I think we should just get our shit together before we try to go off planet. I think we should get our shit together before we try to like make all these particle accelerators and all this other stuff. It's like, where are they getting the money for that? Where's the business plan that justifies, oh, this will benefit everybody if we create? No, it's not. There's some people out there with some pipe dreams, and they got access to all our loot through this taxation thing, right? And it doesn't pay for the roads because we had roads before the income tax. What it does pay for is standing armies and worldwide oppression through a plan that's been in action for like 150 years through what used to be the British Empire, but it's now the British Commonwealth, and now special relationship, and America's, in charge of that. But
and in order to keep that going, they have heavily influenced education and the media, the government, and all of these institutions that people need to understand the trust has been broken.
It is. And I think the good news is that Common Core, I believe, is one of the tipping points for education. A lot of folks are in trances out there, but Common Core, they start to see some of the math problems. I don't know if some of the listeners out there have seen some of the math problems from Common Core. Google some math problems from Common Core. And I have a little business degree, which didn't do much for me, but just a little history. But if you do that, you'll see some of the problems there. And there's not even enough information to solve the math problem. So imagine you're 10 years old, pure sincerity trying to solve this problem, and there's not enough facts to solve the problem. So instead of you're going to say the problem's wrong, you're going to be like, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, right? And everyone around me is getting it, right? And your mind
learned helplessness.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. So I think that's good, and I think that's why more and more folks are going to alternative education. And even for me, my expo, I didn't even use the word alternative because I'm trying to preempt them and say, oh, something's alternative. No. This is real education. What you guys have been doing to us for the last 150 years.
That's alternative.
That's alternative. That's undermining. And so through YouTube, Google, internet, stuff like that, we can get the word out and let them know, sorry guys, the gig is up, And so I'm getting ready to get pushback. I think some of the people who run these schools are also getting some kind of pushback, especially in California. I don't know about New York or Connecticut or anything much on the East Coast, but a lot of these government bureaucrats have a lot of money at stake, and I think that's the issue. When you have people in the system making six figures on taxpayer money and they're not producing anything except mine zombies to our kids, and this is all proven fact. So you can see that and just get active in your own community.
I was just going to say we have a couple of friends who are, one of them she's a teacher here locally, and what we're hearing is that teachers realize that all they're doing is teaching for the test.
Totally.
That they're not teaching to educate children, to prepare them for life, to prepare them to be individual human beings responsible for themselves and their own destiny and pursuing their dreams. They're not teaching them to do any of those things. They're teaching them how to memorize and test well. And
aren't we paying enough money?
It's stressful on the teachers.
Yeah, give more money.
Now their value is based on, in this hierarchy, is based on how well these kids test, right? And so you can see how frustrating it must be, not only for the students, but for the teachers as well, and everyone involved.
Exactly. It's very important for the audience and the world to know that the teachers aren't the problem. You guys are just, kind of stuck in the system. You had a good heart, good intention to get out there and do it, but you didn't realize there's this huge behemoth, system above
that has
you,
momentum,
and it has power behind it, and has legislation and all this.
Bill Gates.
And why is that? Because it has billions of dollars behind it.
Right. Bill Gates and his friends all gave their money away to this philanthropy, and then the only thing that Bill Gates has spent more money on, other than Common Core, is the eugenics project that they got going on. Right. And so Bill Gates and his dad have had like 100-year history of supporting eugenics. They're working with the Rockefellers and Warren Buffett and all these other guys who are giving their money away. Oh, give away a big part of your wealth. Yeah, so you can hide it, and then you can do whatever you want with it and not pay taxes. And everyone's going to think you're God, basically. Right. And if Bill Gates...
what do you get in return? In return, you get
Common Core. Your kids get the shaft. They are attacking the youngest among us. What does that tell you about our opposition?
Attend a public school. They're not under a Common Core curriculum.
That's right. Their kids go to private schools,
Right.
and now they're trying to do something like a universal preschool.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, we'll help the kids when they're younger, and that just gets
More time with the state.
build a fire inside. And say, okay. And so, anyways, like I was saying earlier, is that what did these people expect 150 years ago when we start to realize what they're doing to us? Did they think there's not going to be resistance and, we're not going to take leadership? Also, something I heard a few months ago that really inspired me was the Michael Jackson song, The Man in the Mirror.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have heard the song recently. Check it out. But I was watching it, and they got the lyrics on the screen, right? And it says, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. And that was like a dagger to my heart. I said, oh my gosh, okay, I can't blame anybody. I appreciate all the inspiration and empowerment I've received, but I have to take leadership of my life. And so I'm going to take a stand and put my life on the line, and we're going to go do it, because what else are we going to do? No one else, everyone else is doing their own thing. So so it's just really about taking a look and say, hey, we can make a difference. Don't think you're not powerful. And
Sure.
John Taylor Gatto is a huge example of someone who, was kind of a small voice, but he created a huge difference on this planet. And so it's such a great inspiration that one guy can make a difference. You guys here in the studio are doing so much. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but you guys are doing a lot. So we all can take back our minds and empower the next generation, and through technology and community, networking and stuff. I believe it's going to happen.
So you're saying that happiness and learning are inside jobs.
Absolutely.
All right.
Definitely. And don't look for approval from anybody. One of my mentors, he said,
Free your mind.
free your mind. He said it's easier to ask for forgiveness than beg for permission, right? So always going around begging for permission.
Hey, can I film here, city? No, you need a permit. You got to pay this.
Exactly.
And even if you pay it, we're not going to let you film here. It's like, no,
Exactly.
catch me while I'm filming.
Exactly. I want to pass out flyers, maybe jury nullification flyers or something, or whatever it is. Oh no, you need a permit. Well, when you bring 20 people, when you bring 15 people, they're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And as long as you stay calm and collective, right? So anytime, this is a little side note, but anytime you get confronted with authorities, don't get belligerent. You stay calm. You see what Luke Rudowski's doing and stuff, and you just stay calm.
Cool, and collected.
Exactly. And they can't do anything.
And
That's
smile.
Right. Smile.
Let them know you're not a threat.
No, you're just a human being. It's just, that's what you have to make that human connection.
It is. And
with people.
They're also just actors in the game, and a lot of them don't know that.
They haven't thought about their actions.
They're like, oh yeah, this is law. Well, okay, time
I have
out.
a costume and a badge. Look at me.
Exactly,
Deadly
it is.
Force. What's up?
Mm-hmm, it is. So they have no idea. And also the video you guys did of Mark Passio.
Yeah.
Powerful. That is so powerful.
Hey, we're doing another one this October. That's going to be right here. Instead of having to drive down to New Haven to Yale, we're going to do it here in Manchester, which is right next to East Hartford.
October 4th?
October 4th. Yeah, 10-4.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's the same.
10-4.
10-4.
Over and out.
10-4. That's the date of my event too in San Jose, the Education Options Expo. So maybe we'll do some kind of link up or something.
Nature's working hard that day on healing itself.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a lot of stuff on October 4th.
Yeah, there's also a guy in California who's doing that stuff too. So I'm plugged into him, and once you can assert your rights, and he kind of indicates the language that you use.
Well,
right?
like as a for instance, if someone in a costume and a badge and Deadly Force came up to me and they wanted to have a meeting with me that was unscheduled, I would have my first question is this criminal or civil?
Yeah.
And then if it's civil, which it likely is, because I'm not breaking any laws in front of the cops,
right?
Is it a tort or is it a contract dispute? Mm-hmm. Is it property damage or a contract dispute? I don't have a contract with you. I didn't damage your property. Therefore, we have no civil business. Good day, sir.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
And if you can come back from that as a cop, you either got a sense of humor or you got a taser.
Yep.
And either way, I can deal with it.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. It is. What's amazing is that this guy was talking about in California was that you can set up a fee schedule, and I'm still learning how to do it, right? Yeah. And he's like,
you put that on notice with the county clerk, and it's like, if you want to take up my time, I got a fee schedule of $10,000 an hour and make me a rich man. Go ahead, put me in jail for 48 hours.
That's right. And then the officer is personally liable.
Yeah. And so, because the bond, it ties into the bond for the judge and the police, and that's how they're covered against the damages. So that, once you understand their system, you can start to resist effectively. And that way you don't have to be belligerent because you're not in fear, you're not in confusion. The only person who might be fearful or confused is the cop, so you don't want to really confuse or put them in fear because they'll be like pow pow and shoot first, ask questions later.
Exactly. And you
shoot first, destroy the evidence later is how they usually do it.
I'm just glad people are video recording all these incidents because
people are starting to realize that guy in Arizona, the homeless guy that they shot, they basically he
was camping out in the
it was
rocks.
Awful.
Yeah.
And they had like GoPro footage or they had some sort of SEAL Team 6 type of footage on their helmets as they showed gunning them down. I'm like, oh, and they put it out too. It's like, where did that come from?
Well, it's important that people realize that their actions aren't necessarily happening behind closed doors or in a vacuum, that people can take a camera or like any little device that they have and start recording.
They all got
and
phones
now suddenly you are accountable. You didn't think you were accountable or responsible for your actions, but now you are going to be held accountable. And I think other people who who realize even if you're keeping them in line just because they're afraid of people seeing them, like seeing their actions and seeing what's happening, then that's a great effect.
And it should tell them
It's a
something.
great effect. It
Why
should
are you
tell them
afraid
something.
being a public servant and having your actions recorded when you're enforcing?
Well,
That was a GoPro product placement when the battery runs out like that. Deet, 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 deet. See, it shuts it off. And then, so you don't lose your file. When the battery goes dead, it shuts off. And then it shuts off.
Ah,
Isn't that smart?
That's brilliant.
That's nice.
no, but the I think what alarms me is that when these incidences are caught on film, most of the time these police are not held accountable at all.
At all.
So I'm
paid leave. That's called a vacation where I come from. I don't get that.
Exactly.
I don't get paid work, let alone paid leave. And this guy, is and he's still going to have a pension and protection, brotherhood, all that stuff. So again, if you take an oath and you join a group of people who have taken an oath, they offer you special protection. I hear.
Right. It is
more incentive not to be an individual and label yourself. I'm part of this group. I'm part of this
gangs,
group,
basically.
right?
Like Tupac said, they're basically the gangs.
You said that. I didn't.
Right.
His name is David Rodriguez. I'm just fucking with you, dude.
It's your show, though.
It is my show. I am publishing you.
One interesting quote I heard from Buckminster Fuller.
Yeah.
Well, a couple things. Buckminster Fuller did not believe in scarcity.
Yeah.
Right. He said we can do more with less, and
he did the numbers too, and he's like, "We're being lied to about this stuff."
Right.
And he had some real disagreements with Malthus, and in some of his books. So they're credible.
So that was
I was just going to say, and he said that in order to affect change, that all you really have to do is make the old model obsolete.
That's exactly what I was saying.
So by creating something, it's like if
you have to understand the
when
old
you
model
build a
first.
bridge over a river.
Yeah.
Well, see,
I was just going to say, when you build a bridge over a river, you don't have to convince people to use that to get across.
That's right.
It's like,
That's
that
exactly
just
so
makes sense. What a beautiful innovation to our landscape. Now we can
Crossover.
right. No,
cross over safely.
I think the quote which I heard was you never change things by fighting the existing reality.
Right.
You have to
Yes.
create a new model,
Yep.
which makes the old model obsolete. And so I'm applying that to education because there's so much money in the public system where people aren't going to change. And you might see some documentaries on there where they're trying to open up charter schools and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the charter schools get money
Under Common Core.
Under Common Core, exactly. Get the standardized tests.
Yep.
So it's like
And
this
you get standardized kids.
standardized kids, right? So it's like, okay, can I fight this big beast, or let's save some capital?
Can I walk away from it?
You can walk. Absolutely. You're a free person. You do whatever you want. Start your own business right now. You're president of your own personal services corporation. Everyone listen to this. And you can start your own school and you prove it effective, right? You incorporate these principles from John and other people out there, Maria Montessori and everything else. And you create models. And after a few years, you start producing champions at age 12, 14, 16 years old, whether they're going to college for a doctor or starting their own business. And somebody's like, wow.
Doesn't matter if they didn't like the idea of the bridge. They see that it crosses the water effectively and they're going to use it.
Exactly. And so that's what it is. And so I also had this idea like for even like the policing force. And this might be a little bit larger scale, but I think it was in Chicago. They have like a private security force out there where because the public, law enforcement, they aren't responding to calls. They're taking like 20, 30 minutes to get out there. So these folks, they have
took it upon themselves.
And said, okay, let's all put our money together and we'll hire a private security company. And if shit gets bad, we call up the security firm, forget the public system.
Yeah.
And so I like that.
That's how it was in the old days.
Right.
Before they had all these taxes that pay for all this stuff that not necessarily benefiting you.
Right.
So, yeah.
So create models that are new and innovative, and innovation is the key. That's what Bitcoin. What's your take on Bitcoin? Bitcoin looks pretty powerful. You guys were at PorkFest. I don't know.
I always look at it like this. There are plenty of people in love with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What's necessary to keep us safe? It's like there's plenty of people in town partying, but someone has to watch the gates. And I'm watching the gates, and I see at MIT they got an NSA paper from 1996 where they're trying to invent some sort of e-coin cryptocurrency. And that paper had a history of like 15 years at that point. They'd already been working on that. And then you see this thing called Bitcoin with you can't identify who created it or kind of where that dude got his skills or wanted to solve that problem in life and that sort of thing. And then what I see it doing is it is providing an insight into this whole black market area where there are all these invisible transactions through cash and briefcases, that sort of thing. Now people use it for the black market, but there's a whole public chain that if you know the certain thing and you can look it up and you can see every transaction. And like that's not good. That's the opposite of anonymous, right? So I want, in a currency like that, I would want authentication between the person I'm dealing with. I want to know who they are in real life. I want them to know who I am because real business is based on trust. What I might want is privacy from the government and other predators. And so I see it as a good first step. I see vulnerabilities in the blockchain. Like eventually they could just say instead of 21 million Bitcoins, it's 21 billion Bitcoins and it, changes the market. I see a lot of like over 50% of the Bitcoins are owned by a small group of people who are not our friends and are definitely Wall Street tycoons. And I see the truther community kind of being used to give credibility to the Bitcoin so that now they're talking about it on CNBC, so all the early adopters, yes, there's some Bitcoin millionaires and they were used to draw a whole bunch of other people into doing this, but I don't understand it fully enough. And I also know a couple people who lost over $1 million worth of FDR, Federal Reserve notes, FRDs, FRNs, who got wiped because they didn't know how to manage their wallet or have a dark wallet or, made safe or something like that. So people who collect a bunch of Bitcoin money and then all of a sudden it's just gone one day. And you can't really call the FBI to investigate because you don't want people looking in to see what you were doing with your Bitcoins. And so it's almost like you're the way I felt in corporate world was I earned a bunch of money, but I was only temporarily holding that for a bunch of other people who eventually got it.
Right.
So if you're educated enough to make some, it doesn't mean you're educated enough to keep some. So
I am.
Don't use things you don't understand and try to understand Bitcoin. It's pretty challenging on a granular level to really understand what it does. So
yeah, exactly.
I already use two currencies I don't fully understand. I'm not looking to adopt a third.
Right. Now I'm reserving judgment for now, but there's another coin called Dark Coin where it hides the transactions. But also I was thinking they could make it kind of link over to like ultimately an RFID chip, right? Because that's what they want to do. Have an RFID chip and put it up in your hand or something, and there's no actual cash. You just scan it, and it's just like beep, 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 and take it from your account. And they do that in Korea or Asia, where you can get on the subway and just swipe your phone, and buy things and just swipe your phone like that. So it's possible to have some electronic currencies, but so yeah, there's a lot of things happening.
We saw people had like those little, what is it called, a QR code.
Yeah,
and they were using they had some Bitcoin on their phone, and they would just scan it over, and it would transfer money, whatever amount. And so it's pretty interesting. It's a little bit of a mystery to me.
Yeah,
like Rich said, we're still learning about it, but it seems like it's providing an opportunity for people to exchange through another medium, an alternative to Federal Reserve notes. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
In general, but also because it's such an enigma to me, I know that other people must be using it, and it's an enigma to them as well. And they haven't really considered or thought through, all of the applications of it. It's like, what if they did a bait and switch, and it's like one day it's Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin goes down, and they're like, oh well, we have this alternative, and now this is what we're going to use for
As long as they keep cash. When we get to the point where it is a cashless society, we got real problems.
Right. So you understand what I'm saying?
Yes. As long as there's always the possibility of using cash, we're not completely under their control, because there's always somebody that can flip the switch and you're wiped out, because it's all electrons going through wires. But if you have a pile of silver or gold that's worth a certain amount, I mean, this is obvious, but I just wanted to say it.
Yeah.
Don't ever get to the point where it's all electronic. That's
definitely never put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially in a basket that's
electronic.
Electronic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the sketchy part. Is like you hit delete. Somebody actually hits delete. Oh, there goes all your money.
Yeah.
Right. So I think having something physical, is
I
important.
like the feel of gold too. I have to admit, I have a few gold coins.
Exactly.
Sometimes I just like to flip them around and
you got some of value right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and
exactly.
Well, do you know that-
historically, I mean, the metaphor, not metaphor, the literally, at the time of the birth of Christ, you could buy a toga and sandals for an ounce of gold. Now you want to buy a suit, it's about an ounce of gold. $1,300 will get
Right.
you shoes and a decent suit.
Right.
So, that's 2,000 years of holding its value,
It is.
and it'll probably stay that way. When it's $10,000 for a suit and shoes, gold will be worth an ounce of gold will be worth that much. I predict. It's my prediction. So have some gold, a little bit, at least.
Diversify.
Yeah.
You want to diversify your investments.
Yeah, definitely.
I learned at PorkFest that silver is valuable beyond just being traded as a currency.
Right.
It has value because it's antimicrobial, it's
Right.
antibacterial. It has these properties to it. It's the most
Conductivity.
Yeah, right. It's conductivity, etc. And I also learned that silverware was made of silver for those properties, antibacterial, antimicrobial, and that's why they were making silverware silver.
Right.
It's not easy to maintain. I mean, you have to always, polish it, etc. But they were doing it because it was what do you say?
Good hygiene.
Hygiene. It was good hygiene. It was good hygiene.
That's wild. That's an obvious thought that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, neither did I.
I'm glad to hear. I'm glad that I know that now.
I just realized that life is short, and this is not a play.
And there's no second takes.
This is real life. Exactly. It's not dress rehearsal. Play your game. And I've been taking some transformational courses, leadership courses, stuff like this. And one of the distinctions is the distinction between, for example, let's talk about soccer, right? People paying attention to soccer, everything. So there's players in the game, and there's spectators.
Yep.
Okay, so we are players in the game. Why? Because we're in the game.
We're on the field.
We're on the field. We're making moves, right?
And we know we can't score without a goal.
That's right. We can't score without a goal. But guess what? You got spectators way up there who are like maybe judging us, or maybe say, "Oh yeah, these guys are doing good, whatever, bad, or whatever." And but their conversation doesn't matter.
Learn to play the game. Get on the field.
Get on the field. Experience the triumph. Experience the defeat. You're a human being, and experience your emotions. Your emotions have power, and you were placed on earth for a reason. You have a gift. You have a voice. You have a message that no one else has. Your thumbprints, all your fingerprints are unique.
For a reason.
For a reason.
The law of identification is in nature, and it's reasonable to copy that as human beings.
That's right. So step into it, right? And accept the gift, accept the challenge, because at one point the lights go off and you don't want to have any type of regrets. And it's the
leave it all on the field.
Leave it all on the field. That's right. And you're actually, imagine 80, 90 years old, you're sitting on your front porch, rocking back and forth on your rocking chair, and you say, "I did it. Yeah, I did it." Whatever that it is for you. Most people don't know, that's no problem. But when you go around talking to people, ask people what their dream is. Ask people, hey, what are you passionate about? Connect with people, because guess what? Most people are not. Most people hate their jobs.
And most people aren't being connected with. They just watch TV, go to their job, come home, and everyone's just kind of going through motions without it's stimulus response.
Exactly.
So I say put thinking back in.
What makes you happy?
Yep. What makes you happy, and also
What moves you?
What moves you, and the quote that you opened up, I can't remember which one with me was the ultimate history. The habit.
Habit is the enormous flywheel of society. It's most precious. Lisa had to say that quote.
Agent.
Yeah, she had to say that quote over and over again. We know that quote.
It's a tough
but it is true, and that's what I really changed. Like when I was showing Allan the brain model yesterday, he's like, "Wow, this must have taken so long." I'm like, "Oh well, I changed some habits. I started using it on a recurring basis, and when I learned something new, I put it in here and I showed him how to." He's like, "Okay, I get it. It's a lot of little time periods added up over years."
Mm-hmm.
So that's really how you think of it. It's like you're not going to take on a 10,000-hour project. You think, I'm going to spend a half hour today learning about my world, about things that I thought I knew about, that I had made assumptions about, but I really needed to look at firsthand at least one day in my life. And then now I understand how this institution came about, and I understand how it fits into context. The next day I learn about an adjacent institution instead of the World Trade Organization, the IMF, or the World Bank, and you go through these things. So at least one day in your life you looked at, oh, this is, the PR that we see is not really the nature of the organization, and
Right.
You get wiser.
That's right.
And you do that recurring, and on a recurring basis, you get a little wisdom. And that is putting the knowledge in action and communicating to other people.
That's right. And also create your own agenda, right? Everybody has their own agenda. I think entrepreneurs and business should be successful as long as ethical, moral, whatever it is, giving value to community. But the corporations that are marketing to us, they have their agenda. So what is their agenda? Hey, that's up to you. They got to generate a profit and, all these other things. So I lost the train of thought where I was going.
Well, here, I got a good little segue for that.
Yeah.
It's about rediscovering your agenda, because I think, when Gatto tells a story about how to train fleas, he's like, they all have their individual flea agendas, and that has to be broken.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So at one point, we went through public school. We had our individual agendas broken, what we wanted to do in life, because they said, oh, well, you can't make enough money, or you can't do this, or whatever. You can't be an artist to make a living because you don't make any money.
Right.
You don't want to be poor. You want to have a Porsche. You got to have a job that pays money. Like this is just common sense. When you're growing up, that's what people are telling you. It sounds great. But at some point, you have to rediscover your agenda. What would you be like if you weren't following all these rules about fear and pain and, public people making fun of you or whatever?
Peer pressure.
Right? Peer pressure. Yeah. So rediscover your agenda and truly say, what is available on this planet to do with my life?
Yeah.
What is necessary? What would be beneficial? What would I like someone to do for me and do that for someone else? Like golden rule type of stuff, right? So that's what I mean. So for a lot of people, it will be discovering their agenda for the first time. But just know that until you were 4 or 5 years old, you had your own urges and direction, and you had your own inclination and interest and things that made you curious and you wanted to learn about, or you saw people that you wanted to be like them, or because they're helping people out or whatever. Rediscover that, because that is what makes human beings human, and that is what made America at one point America before we got all our tax dollars used against our self-interest. So,
and if I could just add one book recommendation from John, and he mentioned a few things which I hadn't read before. There was
recommendations from John Taylor Gatto.
That's right,
coming up right now.
That's right. Here we go. And so he said Adam Smith. He said a lot of libertarian folks mention Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations. Most people never read it, so read that one. And he mentioned
it talks about opium production and how to improve it.
Because
that's the produce that he's talking about improving, because he works for the East India Company, and so did Malthus and a whole bunch of these other dudes. They're in the history blueprint. You can check them out. But go ahead.
Check
what
that out.
the
Other one? Yeah, Theory of Moral Sentiments.
Who's that by?
That's Adam Smith as well.
Adam Smith.
And then the other one, which is really attractive to me, was the autobiography of John Stuart Mills. And he said John Stuart Mills.
He's also East India Company, and his dad was too.
Okay, well, this will be interesting because he was speaking, I think, 8 languages by age 10, and his father believed that you could actually create artificial genius. And so I think in that book, he kind of goes over that. So I think that's probably the first book I'm going to look into when I get back. But
create artificial genius? Do you mean, I would take that. I don't know.
Or this is from John.
Inspire the genius that's is already within each
how to
individual. How to activate and
the
inspire.
innate genius, to take the implicit genius and make it explicit.
Right.
Exactly. I mean,
if that's not what he's talking about, that sounds like a cool book.
Exactly. No, it is. So that was the words from John. But then Buckminster Fuller also said, every child is a born genius. Yeah. The problem is in the process of living, they get de-geniused. Yeah. Why? They're trying to please their parents, trying to please their teachers, and all of a sudden it's exterior approval, and they forgot about approving themselves and being proud of themselves and having self-value, self-worth, and through competence, right? So, so that was the kind of last.
Okay, so the proof of that, in my observance of experience, would be prior to us being sent to school, we all learned how to speak. We all learned how to listen and speak for the most part, unless we have some sort of way that we're not picking up or not able to put out. That's going on in a majority of people, and no outcome-based teacher came and gave you tests, and it's like, know. So these are things we learn to do, and that's what he's talking about. Genius is there; it's present. It's learning, and they in the ruling class said if we want to hold ourselves and establish ourselves long term, we got to come up with a method to suppress that on a regular basis, because any one of these individuals could start learning and wreck their whole thing.
To trick people into believing learning takes place between these times and these years and these 15,000 hours.
And that's it. Just
this
assume
is what
for the rest
learning
of your
is.
life
It's us telling you
that you were told the
what's
truth.
up. Right?
Yeah.
Instead of you being out and exploring the world through your experience and
exploration,
your curiosity,
creating trial and error. So powerful. Another thing is that I really am just angry that the system puts a bad thing on failure. Failure is so good.
Necessary to success, it is.
It's so important, right? The founder of IBM.
If you can learn from your failure and you can move forward and keep going and find the courage to keep going, then it's not a failure. It's just a learning experience.
Failure's not.
And that's what life is.
Exactly. It is. It's
like
an experiment.
We're tricked into thinking this is when we learn in school. No, this is a classroom. This is a classroom.
It is. Failure is not final. It's feedback. And you just keep going for it and forget.
I like that. Failure is not final. It's feedback.
And these are beliefs that I have to develop for myself, because
otherwise, how are you going to be self-reliant and get real self-confidence and generate your own self-esteem? You'd have to buy it at the store like everyone else.
That's right. And the funny thing is that on graduation, as you guys know too, it's called commencement.
Yeah.
And people are like, "Yeah, I'm finished." Woo! And then after I think I was listening to like Earl Nightingale, commencement, the launching of the starting anew.
Yeah.
You're actually
Right.
starting when you get your degree, whether it's bachelor's or master's.
Yeah.
Whatever. So it's like it's lifelong.
You're like a ship that they've been building for 4 years in a dry dock, and now they're going to break the champagne and send you out there and see if you sink or
Sink or
float.
swim.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
See if they forgot something.
We forgot to put the plug in that one.
Right.
Sorry.
With a propeller.
Sorry. It's the natural state of a ship.
Mm-hmm.
A ship floating is artificial. And so the natural state after nature takes place is it's going to sink. So sooner or later, everyone's going to sink. It's just how far you can get before that happens, right? No one gets out of here alive. So carpe diem. And that's what you're doing this morning. You said, I could go all the way up to Rich and Lisa's studio, have a little chat, and then drive all the way back down to JFK Airport to fly all the way back across California.
Yeah.
I'm pleased that you would go through that much trouble to go beyond a Skype call.
Yeah.
To be here in person, to see what's going on. We wish you could stay longer, and we wish JFK Airport weren't so far away, or that we had some way to get you there, but then you'd miss the time of travel. And that's the contemplation
Yes.
that really makes everything meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for taking your time to get here, or taking time to get here,
Yeah.
and for being willing to be put in front of microphones and cameras, because this way we can spread the love. You know what I'm saying?
I totally know what you're saying. Anytime you guys are out in California, let me know, especially in the Bay Area.
Oh, we will.
Yeah, come out, and I'm happy to show you around, and we'll get together again. And this is a lifelong journey. I commit my life to education. I have some kind of ventures on the background I didn't mention to you guys yet, which I'll share with you off the mic. This is going to be a very exciting venture. God willing, we stay healthy long. 80, 90 years of health.
Yeah.
Eating healthy, drinking water, and stuff like this. So I look forward to creating a positive relationship with you and other people in the community, and connecting with people all throughout the nation, and really restoring our minds and the minds of our children.
And yet again, it's another example that learning is the answer, and what is the question. Until next time, I'm Richard Grove, here with Lisa Arbucheski, with David Rodriguez, and our special guest in the back, Allan Weisbecker. You'll be seeing more from Allan after I get this video edited, and we'll check you out soon. Peace.
I just want to say I love your energy. It's
Oh, cool.
contagious.
Oh, right on. Thanks.
It's contagious.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's real. It's it's just my library's not as extensive as your guys's, but it is about
You
self-development.
get a couple years to catch up.
Exactly.
This is all from the past 10 years. I didn't have any of these books
See, that was-
before
So
10
I
years
wanted
ago,
that-
or 11
what do
years
you-
ago, I guess now.
Yeah.
I'll keep adding years.
Let me just put this here. So
Yeah.
it's not-
No, I was excited, man. When I saw your guys' interview, I was like, dude, who is this guy, man? This is awesome. The interview was so mind-blowing for
Which
me.
one do you see first?
Ultimate
No.
History Lesson.
Oh, right on.
Because I was seeing others. I think I met, through Charlotte Isserbit, I think
Don't leave that on. Sorry.
on Alex Jones' channel and stuff. I just started researching. I knew something was wrong with the education system, but it was like, oh, okay, they're trying to steer me over here. And then when you launched it, I think it was 2012, you launched it, I was like, holy shit, dude. Like, who is this? Who are these people, man? This was awesome, man. It's like, you got all this information. You got the subtitles there. And what that does for me, it gives me courage, gives me strength when I'm out there talking to people. Nobody knows about this information. And this is all like, hidden information. So I can go out there and I can share this. Alexander Inglis, the English honor lecturer at Harvard.
Yeah.
Right? And so seriously, when I'm
People are
talking
like,
to people,
okay.
I keep a straight demeanor, right? And I'm just like, this is real.